for tonight. All right, so let me just pull that up. All right, can everyone see this, my screen okay? And here's our agenda for the night. Let me know if that's not coming through. All right, well, first order of business, since it doesn't appear there's any public comment that anyone wants to offer, is just the minutes of the 20th. So I've got those pulled up here. I hope folks had a chance to take a look at them. Let me know if we have any changes, and if not, I've got a motion if Raloon or someone else wants to make that motion.
Do people still need a minute to look at them, or are they all set?
I'm all set.
Eric, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I just realized that. Sorry, everything looked fine on my end too. So
Okay.
I'm okay making a motion to approve the minutes of the May 20th, 2025 meeting.
Okay, I'll second that. And should I do roll call?
Sure.
Okay, so Eric Farrell,
Aye.
and Holly,
Yes.
and Raloon Bialik, yes.
Great, okay. And of course, we don't have meeting minutes for June because we had to cancel that since we couldn't quite get a quorum. So we should be up to date on minutes at the moment. So moving on further down our agenda here, we've got a few discussion decision items. I sent around an updated kind of annotated agenda just to give you guys kind of my thoughts and some of the background that folks had asked for. So number one is the wiring inspector job description that we've been talking about. Just to recap, in our bylaws, it says that there needs to be a job description for the wiring inspector that's approved by personnel board. It's a little bit of a unique situation because that position is so part-time, it's never been on our class comp. And I think last time around, Holly may have asked, how is this person compensated? What's the story there? So in the past, it was a revolving fund that had been set up by the town, and that was how all of those inspectors, plumbing inspector, gas inspector, et cetera, were receiving compensation. And then I, for whatever reason, the town realized that it was going to be more advantageous to put those positions on the operating budget. And so when that happened, rather than it go on the class comp, it kind of became raises were at the discretion of the building inspector. And I think that's probably just based on what the going rates in surrounding communities were. This, again, most of these inspectors are very part-time, and they're kind of just working on an as-needed basis. So that's kind of the background on the position. And for whatever reason, the wiring inspector is singled out in our bylaws as needing an actual approved job description by the personnel board. So I did send around a version of that. I hope people had a chance to take a look. This job description was, is taken from some other communities, and then, Bob Walden, our building inspector, took a look at it. In particular, the minimum requirements, and our assistant town administrator, Greg Snedeker, also took a look at it. And they thought it seemed sufficient for our purposes. So I don't know if other folks got a chance to look at it. This could be a first reading if we want to come back to this at a later date, or we could go ahead and vote this and approve it tonight.
I'd be happy to approve it tonight, but I have not read it yet. So do we want to take a few minutes and just look it over quick so we can move this along?
Sure, I think probably that's probably more efficient to read it now and get it over with. So yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I like that idea too.
We've been talking about it for quite a while.
Yeah, take a couple of minutes, read through it. If you're reading off my screen, let me know when you need me to move the screen a bit, and then we can talk about it afterwards. Oh, I see right away the word city snuck in there when it should say town, so I'll make that correction.
Thank you.
I have a question. Did I miss it or does it just not say how many hours a week the position is?
So it doesn't say, I think it can really vary for the position. It's generally a low number of hours though. I think Wayne Shaw, who was previously the electrical inspector, had like a 2 hour a week office hour setup. And, frankly, I'm not sure he even needed that some days or some weeks.
Okay,
And now, our permitting is handled through Permitize. So it's an online permitting system. And so essentially, when somebody applies for a building permit or an electrical permit, this person is getting pinged as part of that process. And that's kind of when they know when to schedule an inspection, or follow up with, a resident or whoever's applying for a permit.
okay, that makes sense. So that's those hours is just something that would be discussed in the interview. It's just this gives it the flexibility to vary depending on what the needs are of the town.
Right. Yeah. And again, these inspector positions they're unique in that they're extremely part-time and
Yeah.
really just as needed. Yeah,
Yeah. So a working electrician would probably do this just on the side, kind of.
exactly.
On page 2, just as you'd notice at the beginning, there's city staff, city fire and police
Right.
departments. Changing that over to town.
Okay, great. I'll make that update.
I think it's in was it the 4th bullet point where I'm seeing it under the job environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do it just a control F for city and just change it to town. So
Okay.
should catch that.
All right. Well, this looks good to me. Do people need more time or do they want to discuss anything else further before we vote on it?
I'm good to go.
How
Yeah,
about you, Eric? Yeah?
I'm good as well.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the description, the job description for the inspector of wires as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Eric Farrell,
Yes.
and Holly Lankowski,
Yes.
and Raloon Bialik, yes.
Great. All right, and I'll make the change we discussed about, removing the word city, and then we'll make sure that's included in any postings for the position going forward. So appreciate you guys taking care of that. Sorry for the long the struggle to get that across the finish line, but we got there. So appreciate the board's help with that. Moving on, next item on our agenda is the conservation agent position. So the conservation agent position, just as a reminder, this is something that Pete Law, the chair of our Conservation Commission, had come to the board with back in, I think, December. We had talked about it a little bit. And I think we came to the conclusion that kind of what made the most sense for the position was just to pilot it using non-operating funds. So the Conservation Commission has a Wetlands Protection Act fund. They have close to $30,000 in that fund. And so Pete's determination was, okay, I'm going to move forward with just a pilot for this position for a handful of months. We'll kind of get a sense from that of, whether the position is really needed. And if it is needed, what's the appropriate number of hours, and maybe, learn a little bit more about what we need in terms of support for the Conservation Commission. I know it's been a major ask for Pete. If anyone who works with him regularly knows, he does just a ton of work enforcing the Wetlands Protection Act and doing all the other things that the commission needs to do. And on top of that, there's a number of items that the Conservation Commission does not currently undertake. They don't, they own some land, but they have no sort of bylaws to manage that land. And they have no person to do any monitoring of it, other than the volunteer board members, who are usually, no pun intended, pretty swamped. So it's been a big ask for Pete, but currently I believe he is interviewing candidates for the pilot position. I don't think he's found anyone just yet, so he's continuing that process. But I did want to bring this back to the personnel board because, the position was posted, I believe, at a grade C to D. But it's a question to the personnel board, what grade would be appropriate for the position, and whether it should be on our class comp at all. I think these aren't things we have to decide tonight because, of course, we haven't even piloted the position at all. So we're not 100% sure it's necessary. But I just wanted to kind of put it on everyone's radar, and then, collect any thoughts or get any questions from the board that you'd like me to pose to Pete or, to the select board in this process.
So just to clarify, you're saying that the funding to do the sort of trial period are you talking about that starting now, or has that already been going?
So, Pete hasn't actually found a person who can fill that piloted position. But yes, that once he does, that position would be funded on a temporary basis through these Wetlands Protection Act funds. Yes. And then I think, if at the end of the kind of pilot period there, it was pretty clear there was a need for the position, and we had figured out a decent number of, the correct number of hours to allocate to the position, then we could, then I think Pete would be making a request to the finance committee and the personnel board with, a proposed salary, et cetera, to be, carried by the operating budget.
Okay, that sounds like to me, it sounds like a good idea. And then we can see how that goes. And then, like I'm reading your annotated agenda that, before the budget season, just have Pete Law discuss the position with the board, and the board can determine if it should be on class comp, and then we would become re-involved.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
I have one other question, Raylene, when you're
Yeah.
finished.
I'm done.
Okay, so we have the copy of the conservation agent, draft of the job description. And it says classification F. But we've not approved that, correct?
Correct, and I think that's probably an outdated draft copy.
Okay.
So I think, let me stop my share here really quick, and I can pull up an updated version for everyone.
So, I guess because I'm still learning this whole process and having done, Amy's job, I'm still at a loss of this whole, how to establish points within certain categories. But I don't think I have any of that information that I would even be able to take a gander at that. Once,
Mhm.
like, say, we're ready to look at this to grade it and give it a full grade. I know there was that Collins or something group that had some kind of matrix that you work through, but I don't have any of that stuff. Should I have access to that or not?
Oh, I can certainly send that around again, if, if that would be helpful. I will say, so with the grading of positions, there is some value to that. We also have to be realistic that we're looking at, a job market. Oh, hey, Trevor. Sorry, Trevor just walked in. And so, looking at surrounding communities and what they're paying for that position is also going to factor in. And so there's kind of a balance there. I think when we looked at, the level of complexity, so I think Greg took a look at the initial look at the job description for the conservation agent, and the complexity was, potentially quite high. And so, this might be a grade F position. But realistically, communities are not paying this at a grade F. They're, and so when we posted the position, we posted it within the range that's a C or a D. And that's just, again, actually, you know what, I'll pull this up. We had some pretty good data from FERCog. They do a wage and salary survey. Can everyone see this kind of black and white matrix here?
You shared that with us before.
Okay, great.
So just how to, digest this.
Yep. Yeah, and again, no decision needs to be made tonight about anything. We're gonna see what happens with this pilot position. But this kind of led us to think, all right, if we, if we thought of posting this at an F, we maybe would get a lot of applicants, but it might not be the best use of town resources. And so I think, again, when you're grading positions, you want to look at the complexity, but you also want to look at the market overall.
And it comes down to this committee assesses a grade.
Yeah, I think that's one of the purposes of the board is to do that work.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Although we did a little bit of that a bunch of years ago before COVID, where we were grading, and then we did the big Collins survey, and the Collins survey kind of regraded everything for us, and then that class comp was voted at town meeting, and so I think it's just now kind of coming to pass for the first time in a number of years where there I don't know, there are more positions kind of coming up that we are grading, because a lot of them had already been done by Collins. I'm not 100% confident of that statement because there may have been a few in there that we did kind of assign in the meantime, but and I think what you said, Chris, about it being a combination of using the matrix to figure out what grade it is based on all those different point categories and making sure that it's in line with the other towns, great, like to be competitive. And I think that was really a lot of what the Collins people did is they kind of made sure that our different grading was in line with all the different with the area towns. So that jives in my mind.
Yeah, and I think Raloon, correct me, but I think it was 2021 that we went through the class comp study with Collins Center around then.
Yeah, I think that's right. That sounds about right.
Did you say 2021?
Yeah,
I think
that
that's what
sounds
I've
about
seen.
right.
Yeah.
It took a while, we had it took many, many months because we had many meetings and then there was some research and then there were more meetings and then, and it started with us asking to get this money, to do the process and then waiting and then doing the process and then talking about it and then waiting to vote it in. So it took a long time from start to finish.
Right.
But if we're going to do this, there's nothing further for us to do now on this issue, right? We're going to try.
Right. Right. For the moment, I think we'll just sit tight. To Holly's point, let me, resend around the grading and classification forms. And then you've already got a copy of this FERCog survey data. So that should at least be some food for thought. And then I think, at some point we'll want Pete to kind of, if he is able to find somebody to fill the pilot position, to kind of report back and just say how it's going. And, maybe that'll give us a chance to anticipate whether we're going to need to, consider putting this on the class comp and, what the appropriate level of compensation would be, et cetera. So.
And I would also expect that, once he gets a working individual in, it could even tweak what the description reflects right now, because there may be a little give and take of what's being able to be handled by another person within the block of time that we're hiring them for.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. There could be a bunch of changes to that job description based on the pilot. So.
Thank you for putting up with me learning through this.
Not, I wouldn't say I'm putting up at all. So it's completely fine. All right. Let me see what is next here on our agenda. So I think the last couple things. Oh, well, so let me share this really quick. Sorry. So we had a couple policies outstanding. So I know the select board voted to approve the personnel board's recommendations at their last two meetings. So we had the ADA statement that the board had recommended. We had a conflict of interest policy that the board had recommended. We had an attendance policy that the board had recommended, and then just a slight tweak to vacation policy, basically allowing some discretion for the select board / the town administrator during negotiations. So I think we did want to kind of revisit vacation overall. There was some sense that the vacation policy maybe works pretty well for people if they come right out of high school or college and start working for the town. But for mid-career professionals, it's kind of a challenge the way it's structured currently. So rather than kind of spin our wheels, I thought I'd just see if there's anyone who wants to kind of take that issue forward and maybe do some research and meet with me on occasion, and then we can kind of bring something back to the wider board at a later meeting in terms of possible suggestions and recommendations.
I would be very interested in helping on that.
Great. Okay. Anyone else want to be involved, or?
Is that going to be vacation and bereavement or just vacation?
Well, so bereavement, I know specifically Tim had been interested in that because, I mean, he works for SCEMS, and SCEMS has all sorts of, ways in which it varies from, the town office building employees. So I know I wanted to include him on that in some capacity.
Because I did have some thoughts on that as well, as far as rewording that would be
Okay.
workable, but I don't want to step on toes either.
Yeah,
No, I think
I'm okay with that. I know at least for the next month or so, I would not have really any bandwidth to do anything beyond. So no stepping on my toes, at least.
No, I think that's great, Holly. If you want to, get some information on that, and if Tim gets information as well, then that's all the better.
So as far as working on this, I could reach out to him separately just to give him some thoughts and see where he's at. How does this work?
Yeah, that would be fine. So I will say, it always gets a little tricky with open meeting law with,
Right.
you know, people communicating. I believe you're allowed to communicate with less than a quorum of the board or committee. So yeah, that would be fine if you reached out to Tim. And then, you know, we can, essentially, we're not, if these aren't subcommittees, so to speak, they're just, you know, a working group or a working individual. So yeah, I think if you could reach out to Tim and we could figure out how to divvy things up, that would work well.
I mean, as far as the bereavement, I just had some language. I mean, would it be like better with the, you know, open meeting issues if I just pushed my idea back to you, Chris, and then you could push it out to him?
Yep, that works. That works perfectly well.
And that way,
Yeah,
if he takes that piece of it, then I would just work on the vacation.
great. Yeah, and I do wonder with the bereavement policy, there's, like I said, there's so many ways that SCEMS is a bit different than any of our other, you know, departments. If, you know, bereavement is sort of just the tip of the iceberg on some larger issues that need to be addressed, so. But we'll see what Tim has to say. So yeah, if you send it to me, I'm happy to send Tim
Okay.
something.
Okay,
And then the other thing was performance evaluations. Holly, I know you had also expressed interest in this. I know David had as well. So I might just shoot both of you an email. I've got, at this point, many templates for performance evaluations. And I think it's really just more of a question of what's the best way to go about it. And that, you know, I have also some information from, you know, neighboring towns and other small town administrators, with some thoughts on, you know, how to implement performance evaluations when you have a class comp, and, you know, how that needs to how those things need to interact. So I'll send out couple emails to you and David on that, Holly, if that sounds good.
sure.
Great.
Just a question on that, onto the group. If we want some buy-in, I'm almost thinking start simpler and maybe make it more robust down the road to at least get some buy-in to start using it. But I wonder what the rest of the group thinks.
You mean like starting with a subgroup? We're talking about the performance evaluation, starting with like a not entire town wide.
No, I'm thinking a simpler template of how to evaluate people versus, I mean, obviously between let's say a laborer on the highway department versus our new town planner. Those are greatly different things, and you could
Mhm.
make them very specific to, you know, a staff member versus, you know, a professional position, and then that becomes more complex. And I think the more complex you make a tool, then people, I think they feel it's just too much work to take on. Where if you started more simply with allowing goals to be set between a supervisor and an employee, and then a way to assess those goals.
Mm.
Again, I'm just throwing it out as far as a thought.
I can see where you're going with that.
Because I know sometimes the buy-in for, you know, oh, you're just making us have more work, you know, from a supervisor's perspective, but it's really a good tool on both sides of the fence for the employee and for the supervisor.
Yeah, I agree, Holly, that it's a good idea to take that into account as we, you know, sort of develop it, that it's user friendly, because if it's not and it doesn't get used, then that defeats the purpose.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, okay, All right, well, just just a thought in the beginning.
Yeah, like we could, it doesn't, we don't have to start with our hoped for end goal.
Yep.
All right, so I'll be sending out some emails on all those. I did want to just provide a couple updates on some other positions that the town is hiring for. So town accountant slash budget director, obviously that position has been posted for more than 6 months at this point. I'm pleased to say that we did have a couple candidates interview with the select board last week. And we have made an initial offer to a candidate. We're still in negotiations with them. I'll just say they had a lot of great experience, and I think would be a great fit for the town. So hopefully we'll have a new Brenda soon. And in the meanwhile, Brenda's still sticking around, and she's going to be helping train, the person that we hope to hire. So good news on that front. Couple DPW positions I wanted to mention. So we have the position of mechanic posted. I don't think we've gotten too many candidates. I believe we do have an internal candidate potentially for that position. So hopefully some more updates later in the summer on that. And then our assistant DPW superintendent position also became vacant in May. That position is also posted, and just today, myself and Matthew Morse, our DPW super, and Greg Snedeker all interviewed some candidates. So we've got a couple good candidates, and hope to be recommending someone to interview with the select board soon. So that position should get filled in not too long. We already touched on the piloted Conservation Commission agent. I did want to give a quick update on the principal assessor position. So again, this is prompted by our current administrative assistant to the Board of Assessors, who's planning on retiring soon. And when we looked at, I think with the Finance Committee, we looked at basically, the cost of hiring another administrative assistant versus hiring a principal assessor and just dialing down our consulting services. The latter option kind of made sense. At this point, though, we're not going to need to post the position until at least next spring. We've got Karen in that administrative assistant position until at least then. So more to come on that front. And then our recreation director position, Sue Antonellis is, announced she'll be retiring in August. So that position is posted as well. If you know anyone who's good with kids and good with soccer balls, let us know, because it's going to be tough losing Sue. So we'd love to fill that position soon. Any questions on any of those job postings? Great. Okay. And then just the last item on here, I think kind of our next meeting date, we wanted to figure out, it says July 16th, but obviously today is July 16th, so we'll update that. I think I was looking at kind of creating a little work plan for the board now that we're into FY26. And I've kind of laid out sort of quarterly meetings and what they would look like. Obviously we can meet more frequently if needed, but just wanted to get folks' feedback on that proposed kind of schedule that I put up on the screen there.
Yeah, and this was something we had it looks somewhat familiar that we had talked about it the last time we were able to meet as a group, so.
Yeah, I think that, the basic rhythm of it would be, your first meeting, your Q1 meeting, you're really setting what your work plan is going to be. And, this year it sounds like, vacation policy, employee evaluations, and potentially the, bereavement leave, those are some policies this board has expressed interest in looking at. So I would kind of think of those as, the meat of the work plan. And then in Q2, obviously the personnel board is always involved with the class comp and setting COLA. And then I think by, that third quarter, so sometime in, late winter, early spring, you'd want to have some drafts of the actual rules and regulations you're looking to implement. So, whether it's changes to that vacation policy or you know, a clearer policy around employee evaluation. You know, that's what we'd be aiming to have at that point in the time frame. And then you know, your Q4 meeting. So in May or June, you're actually just making those final recommendations to the select board. So that's the general outline. Just wanted to get people's thoughts, if any, on that work plan.
I like that kind of proposed structure of having sort of flow throughout the year with different quarters. Are you still, I mean, would we still meet monthly, or are you recommending like one meeting, November, December, one? That seems like a big decrease in the amount of time we meet.
Yeah, so that's one question I wanted to ask. So I know there are going to be times when we need to meet more than quarterly, obviously, just because there are, you know, say, job descriptions that need to be reviewed or other personnel issues that the personnel board is going to need to weigh in on. I do what, you know, part of my hope is to basically have, you know, this work kind of happening outside of these public meetings a little bit more. So then when we're coming back to a personnel board meeting, we've got a pretty finished product to review. And then, you know, I think that'll maybe just actually make for more efficient meetings in the end. But absolutely open to other suggestions by the board.
I think that the plan is a good plan because it kind of lays out goals and benchmarks of when to have things ready. But so hypothetically, I'm working on vacation stuff. And ultimately, we're going to be looking at draft of that in February, March. But what if there's a problem with how it's looking? So if these things we're working on separately outside of these meetings, do we call a meeting just to review things, to get some feedback as far as direction, to make sure we're moving in the right, you know? So if we had these quarterly meetings as a for sure, and then with a couple weeks notice, maybe try to throw a meeting in here or there if we had some things to go over, like a job description or progress on one of these topics that we're researching.
Yeah, I think, you know, the way I'd love to do it is if we, you know, once we have David and Tim at a meeting, hopefully next month, we can all take a look at our calendars and just identify, you know, whether or not it's the, you know, the third Tuesday of every month or whatever date works best for folks. Put those all on the calendar, and then, you know, basically, you know, we know that, say, your November meeting or your December meeting, you're definitely going to be talking class comp, so that'll go on that agenda. But, you know, potentially meetings in between, you know, we'll hold that time and just see if we have anything to discuss. And if we don't, then, you know, I don't think we need to meet just for the sake of having a meeting. Does that make sense? So I'd want to check in with any of the folks who are working on any of these policy questions in the background and see, do you want to check in with the board? Do you want to, you know, actually meet this month and get some feedback? And hopefully that'll result in just a more efficient use of our time and our personnel board meetings.
So if say none of us checked in with you to say we want to, you know, present something to the group, and you didn't have a job description, you might say, I don't see anything pressing, we would skip a month.
Yeah, and I would reach out to everyone and just say, is everyone all right with skipping this, or do you have something you want to meet about? So yeah, I think it would just be kind of regularly checking in with board members.
I like that idea.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. I will say we probably should meet in August, though, just so we can actually get a meeting with all 5 members. So I think we had identified, let me just stop sharing for 1 second, because I think we had an August date.
Yeah, was that 19th? Tuesday the 19th I have on my calendar.
Yes, I've got Tuesday the 19th.
At 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's what I have too.
Great. Okay. So we can, everyone can come prepared to share their calendars to that meeting, and we can try to get everything on the calendar for the year. And then, you know, I might flesh out this work plan a little bit, so we have a clearer sense of, you know, what we're working towards. But any other items from any board members at this point?
Nothing on my end.
Sounds
Okay.
good to me, Chris.
Yep, I'm
All
good.
right. Great. All right. Thanks all. Have a great evening, and keep an eye out. I'll be sending some emails around.
Okay,
All
sounds
right.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you
Take care.
all.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.